Hey everyone, I'm Belle Reid, and this video is about one of my all-time favorite synthesis and sound design tools, which is the envelope follower. So when I tell people that my favorite kind of module is an envelope follower, I usually get a lot of blank stares. For many people, envelope followers are just boring utilities that you could easily take or leave, or they're a completely random thing that they've never even heard of. But for me, they are the heart of pretty much every single patch and every single performance that I create. Envelope followers make it easy to create clear and tightly synchronized interactions between acoustic instruments and electronics. They also let you turn the dynamic profile of any sound you create into control voltage. I'm such a big fan, can you tell? Okay, so in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what envelope followers are, how they work, and I'll share some of my favorite ways of using them in both a modular synth and an effects pedal focused setup. All right, so I've hooked up my oscilloscope to help us unpack envelope following. So an envelope follower is a module that accepts an audio input and produces a control voltage whose amplitude is proportional to the incoming signal's loudness. So the louder you play, the higher the output voltage is, and vice versa. The softer you play, the lower the output voltage is. So here on the oscilloscope, the yellow line is the audio signal coming from my microphone, and the blue line is the output from the envelope follower. And there you go. So basically, you're able to create a modulation signal that directly tracks the loudness of your input. So let's take a look at a really simple example where the loudness of my voice will change the pitch of an oscillator. So for this, I'm using a module called the A119 made by Doepfer. The input to the envelope follower is here. There's a gain control knob here, and the output of the envelope follower is here. Okay, cool. So obviously modulating pitch like this isn't the most musically useful example, but it's helpful for seeing the relationship of the loudness of the incoming signal and the control voltage that the envelope produces. Now, the big takeaway here is that the signal that the envelope follower outputs is a control voltage, just like any other CV signal produced from within your synthesizer. So you can use it to modulate any parameter of sound that you choose. Sometimes envelope followers will have controls for the response time of the envelope follower. This particular module is very simple and it doesn't have these controls, but you might see sliders for attack and decay time, or a switch or a knob for the overall response. And basically what this control does is it determines how quickly or how slowly the envelope follower tracks your incoming signal. Okay, so let's take a look at some other demos using the envelope follower signal to modulate some other parameters of sound. So in this patch, I am using the envelope follower out signal to do a couple of different things. First, I'm using it to modulate the speed of this cycling envelope that I have here on Maths. And second, I'm using it to modulate the timbre on XPO. The cycling envelope is being used to strike optimics, so the louder that I sing into the microphone, the faster the strikes will occur. And the last thing that I'm doing here is I'm also taking the direct audio output from the envelope follower, so that's my direct audio signal coming from my microphone, and I'm running that into the FM input here on XPO. this patch, I'm using the envelope follower to control the loudness and the timbre of two different oscillators, the DPO and the XPO. I'm also running the audio signal into the final mixer here, and all of this is going into a delay at the end of the signal chain. So here's another quick demo of this in VCV Rack. I'm using the envelope follower module in the Bog Audio library here. And I'm running my microphone into that envelope follower, and I'm also running it straight into a delay. I'm using the output of the envelope follower to modulate the delay time. So the louder that I get, the shorter the delay time will be. You can also invert the signal coming from the envelope follower so that it goes down the louder that the incoming signal is. So that's what I've done here in this patch. I'm using maths to invert the output of this envelope follower. And I'm using that inverted signal to duck the volume on two different oscillators. So this is a kind of crude side chaining effect in a sense, where the louder that I sing into the microphone, the quieter the oscillators will be. I will note that many envelope followers have an inverted envelope follower output built right into the module. So if yours has that, then you don't need to invert the signal like I did. So one of the reasons why I love working with envelope followers so much is because of how much interaction they make possible. Instead of a synth patch that just drones on regardless of what you're doing, envelope followers essentially act like ears for your instrument, allowing it to sense your activity and your input and alter its behavior in some way in response. Here are some examples of these ideas using effects pedals instead of a modular synth. So here I'm using an envelope follower pedal called Conflict of Interest made by Fairfield Circuitry. And I'm running the output of the envelope follower to the CV input for the delay time on this Moog analog delay. Do it, 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 do it. Hey, grandmother. Envelope followers are cool. Hello. So far, I've been demoing everything using an external microphone input, but it's important to know that envelope followers aren't exclusively for interfacing acoustic instruments with synths or effects. You can run any sound at all into an envelope follower, and in fact, it can be super interesting to run sound from one part of your modular patch into an envelope follower, for example, and then use the output to modulate other aspects of the patch. So for example, here I have a chaotic cross-modulation patch on the DPO, and instead of listening to that directly, I'm running it into the envelope follower, and I'm using the envelope follower output to modulate the cutoff frequency of this filter. All that I'm running into the filter is a very low frequency drone coming from XPO. Or you can run other electronic instruments or samplers in instead. Something that I really love to do is to run field recordings into envelope followers and then process the field recordings while using the envelope follower output to modulate different parameters of the processor. So for example, here in VCV Rack, I have a field recording of fire crackling in a fireplace loaded into this sample player, and I'm running the output of that into an envelope follower. My envelope follower is going into this module called Edge, which is a comparator, and that allows me to derive a gate output every time the envelope follower signal goes above a certain threshold. I'm running my audio straight into this texture synthesizer, which is a clone of the Clouds module by Mutable Instruments, and then I'm using the envelope follower output to modulate a few different parameters here on this texture synthesizer module. So I really love working in this way because what you end up with is a kind of distorted imprint of the original field recording, where you can still identify its source, but everything is kind of blurry and obfuscated in a really interesting way. Or you could try running your field recording and envelope follower output into a resonator instead, for example. Or you could use a contact microphone. So here, for example, I have the Soundwitch made by Landscape FM. It's a fun little passive device that has a contact microphone, some clicky tactile switches, and also some little jingly, rattly bits. And when you plug a cable into it, it becomes amplified. And so I have that cable running into the envelope follower here. I'm running the sound from the Soundwitch over here into the Acarié filter, and then I'm using the envelope follower out from the A119, and I'm using that to modulate the cutoff of the filter. I have the resonance turned up pretty high here on the Acarié so that even subtle little clicks and transients will cause the filter to ring. So in this patch, I'm using the gate output from the envelope follower to trigger maths and to trigger 2 different random voltage generators. I'm then sending those random voltages to a whole bunch of different places within the patch, including the pitch of the oscillators and the rise and fall time on the envelopes. This is one of my favorite patching techniques using envelope followers because it creates this really tight synchronization between your external input and the modular synth, but at the same time, because you're using so much randomness, it's very surprising and unpredictable, and it really feels like you're playing with and collaborating with the instrument. Oh. All right, so did I convince you that envelope followers are awesome? Now, I will say that in this video, I have barely scratched the surface with what's really possible using these tools. And also in terms of what's possible creating interaction using them. But I hope that this was inspiring enough for you to give them a try. In my experience, it does take a little bit of time and practice to really get a feel for how any given envelope follower might respond to your input. And it's important to take time to finely tune your input gain, the envelope follower sensitivity, the response time, and the gate threshold. When you get these dialed in, Envelope followers can completely transform your electronic setup into something that feels like it's breathing with you and really listening to you and collaborating with you, which is pretty cool. I'll leave a link in the description below this video to a free mini course that I put together all about getting started with modular synthesizers. It walks you through modular signal flow, the core fundamentals of synthesis, and how to build your first few patches and design your first few sounds completely from scratch using VCVRAC, which is a free software. You don't need any experience or any special gear to complete this mini course. And also, if you're looking to join an amazing community of folks who are passionate about things like sound design and experimental music and synthesis, then I'd love to invite you to join my Patreon community. We have a private Discord where you can chat with everyone in the community and also ask me questions about what you're working on or what you're curious about. And I frequently share behind the scenes content about my new albums, research projects, and collaborations. You can learn more and get yourself signed up by going to patreon.com/Sarah Belle Reid. All right, that's it for today. As always, thanks so much for watching and for listening, and I'll see you next time.